So in this video, we're going to see how to get started with server actions on Next.js application. So I'm going to start here by opening app, and this is a completely new application. I just created it. And let's open this file, page.ts. Now, to keep things simple, this is what I have here by default, and I'm going to basically delete everything from here. So all of this is going to go, and now it's much simpler. And let's also delete this line. Now, to keep things simple, I'm not going to use a database. What we are going to do instead is simply working with a simple JSON file. So here inside my app folder, I'm going to create a new folder to which I'm going to call data. And inside this data folder, I'm going to have the new JSON file to which I'm going to call items.json. So let's create the new file. And inside data, I'm going to create here items.json. And this is going to be very, very simple. It's simply going to be a JSON array. And let's add a few items to this array. And now in my page.tsx, I want to show the content from this file. So basically, I want to show all of the items that we have in the JSON file. So we're going to start by reading the content of the file, right? We have our JSON file, and I want to read what it currently contains. And this is why I'm going to start by importing fs, the fs module. So import fs from fs, and I'm going to use this version, the premises version. Now, to read the content of the file, we can now use fs.readFile. And as a parameter to read file, I need to pass the path to the JSON file. So here's the JSON file, and it can be found in app/data, and then the name of the file itself, which is items.json. And as a second parameter, I'm going to pass the encoding, which is going to be UTF-8. Now, we are using the premises version, so here I'm going to add a wait, and it of course means that this function has to be asynchronous, so here I'm going to add async, and let's store the result, what we read, the content that we read, in a local constant called items.json. And now that I have the content of the JSON file, I'm going to parse it, to parse the JSON using json.parse to find the actual array of items in this file. So inside my main div, I'm going to start by creating an heading 1 that will simply say item. Then I want to go over the items that we have here in this array, and I simply want to show them one by one. So to do that, I'm going to use map. So items.map, and as a parameter to map, we need to pass a callback. Now this callback is going to have two parameters. The first one is the current element in the array, the one that we are going over right now, and its type is going to be string. And the second parameter is going to be the index of the element on which we're currently going over, and its type is going to be number. For each of these items, we want to display a div, where the content of this div is simply the item itself. So this is what I'm going to show inside the div. Let's start the development server, and we can now see the list of items from the list. Now, of course, these are exactly the same items that we have in the file. But as we can see, we do have one issue here. And if we click on the issue, we can see that it says that each child in a list should have a unique key prop. And this is because here we are using the map to create multiple items, and each of them should have a different key. So let's add a key to each of the divs that we generate for the different items. Each one is going to have a key. And this is exactly the reason I wanted here to have the index, because the index is going to allow me to have different keys for different divs. So maybe we can write here something like item dash and then the index itself. And if we save it this way, we can see that the same list of items is shown, but now we don't have any issues. Next, I want the user to be able to add new items. So first, let's add here another wrapping HTML element. And now I'm going to add here a separating line, a horizontal line. And beneath the horizontal line, I want a new form. And this form will be used for the user to enter the details of the new item they want to add. So the form is going to be relatively simple. It's simply going to have an input in which the user can provide the new item. I also want a label to describe the input. And of course, we also need a button to submit the form. So let's add these three HTML elements. And here we have it. We have the label, we have the input, and we have the button. And now we can see the three of them. Now, what I want to add here is an ID for the input and HTML for the label to connect the label and the input. So let's start by adding an ID to the input, and I'm just going to call it new item input. And now I'm going to add HTML4 for the label, and of course the value is going to be the same thing as the ID of the input, and this way the label will be connected to the input. So here I'm adding HTML4, and let me copy the value of the ID and use it as the HTML4 of the label. And now I can click on the label and the input itself is checked and the user can provide the new item. Now, what about the submission of the form? What are we going to do when the form is submitted? So this is exactly where we're going to use a server action. So even though the form is submitted from the client side, the handling of the form is going to be done on the server side. And this is the beauty of working with the server actions. So let's define a new function. And let's, for example, create it here. And because I want to be able to use this function as a server action, we have to add here use server. This is what's going to allow us to call this function that is implemented server side from the client side. The form is submitted from the client side, and this is the function that will run, that will take care of the submission. Now we immediately already see a small problem here, and it's letting us know that server actions must be async functions. So here I'm going to add async, and here is what I want to show you. Here I'm simply going to start by logging. So let's simply write to the log hello. So hello from server action. And now we're going to connect this function to the form, to the submission of the form. And it's done this way. The action is actually going to be the function. So here in curly braces, I'm going to write the name of the function, add item, and that's about it. And now the question that we're about to explore is whether this log will be shown in the client side or in the server side, right? Because if it's in the client side, we should be able to see it in the browser, in the console tab of the developer tools. But if it's on the server side, we should be able to see it here, because these logs are from the server. And now I'm going to click on the button to submit the form, and we can see hello from server action. So this is something that's shown on the server, which means that this function is actually running on the server. And this gives us a lot of power and ease of access, because we are submitting this event, we are submitting the form from the client side, but we're actually handling the submission on the server side. Now, as a parameter to this function, we're able to send the data from the form. So here I'm going to have a parameter called form data, and its type is going to be form data. And now it's going to be pretty simple. We're simply going to read the JSON file, then we're going to parse it. This way we will have the updated list, the updated array of items from the updated file. Then we will add the new item that the user submitted to the array. And then we will work the reverse way. We will take the updated array, including the new item. We will create a new JSON list from it. And then once we have the updated JSON, we will update the file itself. So let's start by reading the file and parsing the JSON. And to do that, I'm simply going to copy these two lines. So let's paste them here. And now that I have the updated array, which is items, I'm going to add to it, which I'm going to do with push, the new element that the user submitted here. And this is something we can do by using the form data. So form data, get. And as a parameter to get, we're going to use the name of the field that we want to get the value of. The name is what's going to allow us to use get in the form data to extract the corresponding data from this field of the form. So here I'm going to add name, and we can use any name we want. I'm just going to call it new item. And now I should be able to use new item here when I'm using get to extract the information from the form data. So here is going to be new item. And now I have the array with all of the items that are currently in it, plus the new item that we just added to it based on what the user provided here in the form. Now that we have this updated array, I'm going to update my file. And to do that, I'm going to use fs.write file. Now we're going to use the same file, so it's going to be the same path. And the content of the file is going to be json.stringify. And what do we want to stringify? Exactly our items array. And I can also specify the encoding, so it's going to be UTF-8. And if I want to add indentation to my JSON, I can also add here null and 2. And this will add new lines and indentation to the JSON. And of course, write file is an asynchronous function, and this is why here I'm going to add await. So let's try that. Let's take a look at our file, and let's refresh the page. And now, as the user, I'm going to add a new element, a new item, say donkey, and let's try to submit the form, so add new. And you can see that our file immediately updates, and now it contains the new entry. Let's try another one, say horse, and let's submit this one as well. And you can see that once again, the file updated. But the problem is that the page itself does not update. This code actually ran on the server, and our file database did update, but the application itself, the web application, did not update. Here on the browser, we still see the old data, even though the file itself already contains updated information. So the way we solve this in Next is using a function called revalidatePath. And this is something that we're going to run as part of our server action. So here I'm going to add revalidate path, this one. And as you can see, it can be found in next cache. So let's choose this. And you can see that the import for it was added. And here as a parameter, I'm simply going to write the path to this page, which is basically the root of the website. So this is why here I'm simply going to write /. And let's try again. Let's try to add another one, say hamster. And as soon as I add this one, we can see that the application itself updates accordingly.